Okay, welcome to the spring final. We're almost done. This spring final will consist of 102 questions. There are 59 multiple choice questions, 40 true false, 3 subjective, which is short writing. And there will be 3 subject materials. One will consist of The Great Gatsby, the other Tarzan, and finally, the last one will be the research paper. So let's start with what we can remember of The Great Gatsby. And the action of the novel takes place in the 1920s. Gatsby is the main character of the novel, and even though he is the main character, the character in the novel that actually goes through any change that develops is Nick. The eyes of T.J. Eichelberg are kind of like the eyes of God that look over the wastelands as the hopes and dreams of the American dream either die or thrive. Daisy Buchanan comes from a wealthy family in Louisville, which is in the Midwest. Nick Carraway is her second cousin, and he is, just like her, simultaneously drawn, but he is also repelled by the selfish and amoral rich people that he meets and hangs around. When Gatsby and Daisy become lovers, Daisy does not agree to divorce Tom and marry Gatsby, but Gatsby infers that that's what's going to happen. On the other side of things, Myrtle Wilson is an individual who is in her early 20s, and not necessarily early 20s. She's more like mid-30s. She's married to a guy named Wilson, and she is interested in upgrading her life. And the person that she's wanting to upgrade, of course, is with Tom Buchanan. So she takes the role of kind of like a mistress on the side for Tom as they go into the city and have an affair. Daisy knows about Tom and Myrtle, even though she's never met Myrtle, just because of the way Tom's phone calls and his goings on. Nick rents a house in West Egg, Long Island, which is a little less fashionable than East Egg, meaning that West Egg is kind of where the new money, new people becoming rich establish themselves, while as East Egg is old money. While Tom and Myrtle have an argument in the city in their little apartment in front of the guests, Tom basically hits and breaks Myrtle's nose. Gatsby, on the other hand, doesn't inherit his vast wealth, but he does get a lot of money from a benefactor by the name of Dan Cody. Daisy doesn't stay consistent or constant with her assertion that she's never loved Tom and he's always loved Gatsby. She has, in fact, at times, loves both. Although Nick recognizes Jordan's basic dishonesty, this is one of the things that he never really makes plans to marry her. He doesn't fall deeply in love with her, but he does fall in love with her. But it's because of some of her basic character flaws that he eventually ends things with her. Realizing that Daisy loves Gatsby, Tom decides, you know what, I'm not going to give you a divorce, and even though you may be with Gatsby, I don't even know if he necessarily concedes that she loves him, other than he's just a passing thing, and that in the end Daisy loves him and it'll always be with him. George Wilson is the one who kills Gatsby because essentially Tom told him that he's the one who owns the car that hit his wife. Gatsby's funeral is very I guess you could say only 3 people showed up for it, so it wasn't like it was heavily attended. Basically, Myrtle's sister Catherine tells Nick that Tom and Myrtle cannot get married because Daisy's a Catholic and will not agree to a divorce, which is completely false, and a made-up story that Tom has told her. Daisy is the one who accidentally runs down Myrtle Wilson in Gatsby's car. Meyer Wolfheim, who is Gatsby's partner and associate, also is what we would call a bootlegger and a gangster. The individual who wrote this story is F. Scott Fitzgerald, and he modeled his fictional character, Daisy, after his own wife, Zelda. In this story, Gatsby has limitless wealth from unspecified sources, which is true. And basically, Daisy knows Tom has been unfaithful during most of their marriage, ever since they got married and they were on their honeymoon. Nick Carraway is the narrator of the novel and tells the story of Gatsby in the past tense, which is about 5 years after the death of Gatsby. Gatsby believes that the American dream can be bought, which there's a lot of people who feel that way, and that you can relive the past. Nick Carraway grows to like Jay Gatsby and all he stands for, even though he is not a good person. Daisy basically never falls completely and selflessly in love with Jay Gatsby. She's always about herself and what's best for her. When Nick finally breaks up with Jordan, he returns to his beginnings, which is the Midwest. And in this ideal, it shows that he himself is beginning to mature and understanding and learning from the falsities of the rich. Even though Gatsby doesn't get Daisy in the end, he never loses hope that Daisy will be his, and he never truly sees the reality of Daisy and who she really, really is. He still clings and holds on to what she could have been and what he dreamed of her to be. Basically, the carelessness and the irresponsibility of Tom and Daisy is shown by the fact that after Gatsby is killed, they leave town and the mess that they created without a word to anyone. Gatsby's father, his name was Henry C. Gatz, and he tells Nick that his son could have been a great man. And Gatsby's father seemed to be proud of all his son had accomplished and accumulated. And Nick, in the end, decides to leave the East and return to his home in the Midwest after Gatsby's death. In the 1920s, the automobile became a symbol of industrialization and materialism, something that still exists today and will probably continue to exist well into the future. George Wilson dies never knowing who actually Myrtle was messing around with, although he does suspect that it was Tom. Looking at some of the things here, this Myrtle or Jordan Baker was a golf champion who was actually recorded cheating during a tournament by picking up a ball where it lay. Jay Gatsby not only has a lot of money, but he is determined to recapture the past. Whereas Daisy knows that her husband's been unfaithful during their marriage, but yet she still stays with him. Nick Carraway, he prides himself on basically having one good thing about him, which is moral judgment of others. He reserves it. He doesn't judge other people. Basically, Tom Buchanan is rich and is having an affair with Myrtle Wilson, and he believes in white supremacy. Jay Gatsby has mysterious long-distance phone calls that occur quite often, which really we, as the audience, know is to be part of his enterprise or business, which is bootlegging. Nick is second cousin to Daisy. And basically, Nick is the one who rents a small rundown house next to Gatsby's mansion. And the narrator of the story is Nick. And the one who owns and drives a sporty yellow car is Gatsby. And Gatsby is also killed by a jealous husband. Whereas Myrtle is killed by a hit and run. And the car was driven by Daisy. And Wilson believes that Gatsby killed Myrtle because he's the one that Tom said was driving the car, basically, which was the yellow coupe. And Wilson basically takes a gun and kills Gatsby and then shoots himself. Okay, so Now to Tarzan. Basically, there's 3 questions that you will answer in short answer form. And that first one's going to be, what technology does Tarzan employ to kill Tublat? And in what ways or other ways does he show himself to be superior to his ape family? The technology that he uses, if you could call it, is not mechanical, but the technology that he uses is in the form of a blade, such as the knife that his father owned. He also uses rope that he designs out of branches, and he uses these things as a means to basically kill Tublat by stabbing him, and also by using it to cause problems for Tublat in body movement, such as walking or using both arms to attack him by tying him down in certain times. He shows himself to be superior to his ape family, and how he's also able to kill Tublat is he uses intelligence, and he is able to go to higher heights in trees because of the lack of his weight, even though he's strong enough to support himself up. He's able to swim, whereas the apes cannot, or it's not that maybe they cannot, they just choose not to because they don't like getting wet. He also is able to use common sense in not going head to head, but using the ape families like weight against them, and when they get angry, their momentum, and then jumping on their back where they can't reach to make stab wounds and choke them out. He realizes that pound for pound and muscle for muscle, he could not take on any kind of bull ape, but if he employs dexterity, the ability to move around, fighting skills, and the weapons that he employs, he is able to maneuver himself in a position to be much more powerful than his ape family. The next question is, in the novel, why do violent episodes occur? And what causes them? And do only bad characters engage in violence? And to what extent is violence acceptable or even laudable, laughable? And so violent episodes in the novel occur obviously in the forest for survival against other predators, such as tigers, lions, snakes, boars, other apes, even cannibals. That basically, what causes them is, with the animals, primarily it's survival. It's for food. They kill for food, and they kill to basically eat. Cannibals not only kill for food, obviously because they eat their predator, but they also use their bones as trophies. And you could say, well, are only bad characters engaged in violence? And that's incorrect. Tarzan, basically, he's not a bad character, but yet he has to continually he continually kills people in the Bonga village. One was in revenge for his mother's murder. He also engages in violence to Clayton, or about Jane going to marry him, so he wants to step in that regard. Or not Clayton, but I would say Jane's fiance, forced on her by the fact that her father owes the debt. And to what extent do we say violence is acceptable or even laughable? Violence is acceptable when trying to survive, when you have no other option because there is something or someone attacking you, whether it's an uprising of shipmates that are trying to kill officers or leaving you stranded, whether it's cannibals trying to attack you, or whether it's just animals coming to attack, looking for food. That is an acceptable form when trying to survive. Laughable even in the sense of hurting oneself or hurting another person on accident simply because of ignorance. Next question. To what extent does Jane have an effect on Tarzan? And is she civilizing force? How does Tarzan affect Jane? Well, the effect that Jane has on Tarzan is obviously he's never seen a female. And what's more is Jane's just not any female. She's a very attractive female. And because of that fact, she has a resounding effect that all animals have, which is the ability or wanting to mate. and not only to mate, but to have a mate, someone to protect, someone to care for, someone to love, someone to be loved by. And so Jane's effect on Tarzan is a civilizing one, because Tarzan has a chance he could just take her. He could use her the way he wants. But instead, he wants to be more of a gentleman. He wants her to want him back. He doesn't want to insult her or hurt her or, infringe upon her needs or her wants. And so, in that sense, she is taking a wild man who has no learned behavior pattern for being a gentleman and how to conduct themselves around a lady, especially when trying to court her, which means to marry. But how does Tarzan affect Jane? He makes her want to be wild, whereas she's usually not impulsive. She's very meticulous with her thoughts. She plans. She's a very intelligent young lady, and yet when she's around Tarzan, she's willing to throw all of that to the wind. And so you've got this whirlwind of emotions about the two, and they are essentially locked in a constant argumentative thing. Should I be with her? Because she's, she will change me. Should I be with him? I don't know if it's a good match. And so they just constantly go back and forth. All right, let's go to the research paper now. Basically, whenever you are creating a thesis statement, you are obviously including a statement, you're including a topic and your attitude or opinion about that topic, and you usually focus and direct on the essay itself. That all is focused in a thesis statement, which is in the first paragraph of a paper. One of the things you don't want to stay focused or not considered whenever doing a thesis statement is you don't you basically don't want to personalize or announce itself or ask a bunch of questions. You want the thesis statement to appear at the end of the introduction. Usually it's the last sentence to the last two sentences possibly of a paragraph, which introduces the topic. And the definition of the thesis statement is quite easy. It's topic plus controlling idea. The introduction, what it should not include is a concluding statement, period. An introduction should have a thesis statement. It should introduce the topic. It should be inviting, and it should entice the reader and continue to read after the first sentence. It should have reasons, examples, cause and effect. It describes, will it classify, describe, narrate, or explain? These are all things that are included, but a concluding statement is not one of those in an introduction. An example of copyright material or protected work that is say a logo is, cartoons are, typeface, those are examples of copyright. Now, personal opinion is not copyright material. It's your opinion, so it does not have to be considered copywritten. Another example of copyright is, like, say, web pages, drawings, even graffiti is copyrighted and protected, but common knowledge is not. More examples, things that are copywritten, jokes, musical scores, interviews, these are all protected by copyright. However, you know that phone conversations are not considered copywritten. Slogans and speeches, definitely copywritten, but personal bedtime stories, things that you make up, those are not considered copyright. Pamphlets, journals, diaries, these basically are considered copyright. But a class lecture, something a teacher just lectures to the class about, that is not considered an example of copyright. Another one, class notes, John F. Kennedy's Life and Events, or class not taking services. These kind of things are examples of not copywritten stuff. Okay, if I take some class notes, or if the class is not taking services, or I write something randomly about John Kennedy's life and events that I've researched, that's not protected by copyright. Those are things that we write based on being given to us. But a leaflet something that I pull from that has information on it, yes, that's example of copyright. All right, so after copyright, non-copyright. Ideas. All right, so using someone's ideas and writings, representing them as your own, is obviously plagiarism. And citing your sources is extremely important, okay? When it is considered not an example of citing your sources, when you imply you have independently thought of all the ideas in your paper, meaning you have no citations whatsoever. That would tell us, the reader, that you are saying you did everything in this paper by yourself, which we know would not be true. Another example that is not an example of not citing your sources is giving due credit to the creator of the work you're using. You are not citing your source if you are not giving credit to the person, period. That's just how it works. This is probably okay to use. Common knowledge is always okay to use. Facts that can be found in numerous places, but typically are likely to be known by a lot of people. That's okay to use. But another person's ideas, theories, opinions, statistics, facts, these things that are not common knowledge, those are not okay to use. Not without using citations. Okay, paraphrasing basically is using someone else's words verbatim, period, word for word. And when you're quoting a sentence, you put the person's words in quotation marks when quoting longer amounts. So when you put a quote, let's say in, and it's indented, you include the source within the text of your paper in the footnote, and that's considered whatever you are using someone else's work, you put them in your own words, that's considered paraphrasing. Now, quotation is using someone else's word for word, verbatim. That is considered quoting or direct quoting. If you're using someone else's ideas but you put them into your own words, obviously paraphrasing. Just to restate, when you use the standard form of citation, such as what's called MLA style, that is what's called citing. And MLA stands for Modern Language Association. And how would I know, let's say, that, or how will my instructor, let's say, will know if I borrowed somebody's work? Well, I could do an in-depth search in the library databases to see if you borrowed something. I could do a phrase search in the web directories. I could do an advanced phrase search in Google, placing the phrase in quotes. I can even ask a student to write an essay in class or to write a summary on the questionable issue if I think that somebody's done that. So those are ways that I will know if you borrowed someone else's work. And that's about it. So, with that being said, good luck on your final. It shouldn't be overly difficult, and I look forward to seeing some of you next year as seniors and some of you graduating right now. Have a great summer.